Hi everyone. Today I want to talk about OCD. That's obsessive compulsive disorder. So basically, I have OCD and I have had it since I was a teenager. I'm not entirely sure when it started, but I definitely remember having symptoms during my teenage years. I think I'd say about 13, maybe. So basically, what OCD is, you basically have intrusive thoughts and feelings and images, and you try to get rid of these by doing compulsions. And OCD, it often doesn't make sense. So, like the intrusive thoughts and things, they tend to prey on your worst fears. But quite often, it's just stuff that comes out of nowhere, and you're like, why is that in my head? Where did that come from? That's not normal. I shouldn't be thinking that. Like, it's quite often bad thoughts. Like, for example, some people will get the thought that they've hurt someone, and they're like, where did that come from? And it will seem so real that they'll actually believe maybe they've hurt someone, or they'll have an image of something bad happening, or they might just have this thought that if they don't do something, that something bad will happen, or they're going to cause something bad to happen. It's usually always bad things that you don't want. And then the compulsions, sometimes they make sense and quite often they don't. For example, you might have a compulsion where you have to tap every lamppost that you walk past 4 times, or else somebody will die. And you know it doesn't make sense, but you don't want to take that risk because it's the OCD makes it sound like it could happen. And I mean, nobody wants somebody else to die. So, like, you think, well, I have to touch these lampposts, so I'll touch them. Um, it preys on your worst fears, and it sort of claws into your brain and brings you down and stuff. It's quite negative, really. So when I was a kid, it first started off with a sort of contamination OCD, but at the same time, it was a just right OCD. Now, with contamination OCD, you think that things are dirty or contaminated, or like, for me, it wasn't so much like germs, it was like I could see dirt patches and I couldn't touch the dirt patches because they were bad. And that's about the extent of my OCD. Whereas with other people, there's more specific, like they might focus on a specific virus, or a common one is focusing on HIV, and they think if they touch something or they don't clean something that they might catch or HIV. Whereas mine was just like, something's dirty, you can't touch it. Um, and also with the just right OCD, it was like this was more Tourettic OCD leaning, in that I had premonitory premonitory urges where I had to do things evenly or until they just felt right. So, for example, I feel like I've done this video before. So, for example, I would have to, if I had a backpack on, I would have to have it on both shoulders, and it had to be equal. So I couldn't have one strap longer than the other, or the weight one-sided. It had to be even. Otherwise, it just felt wrong, and I couldn't concentrate on anything else. It's like someone tapping you constantly. You can't ignore it. It's so hard to ignore. You just have to turn around and shout at them. Except it's not tapping, it's just an uncomfortable feeling. And instead of shouting at them, I would have to fix it to get rid of the feeling. So yeah, I was dealing with both of these at the same time. So what that would look like was my clothes didn't feel right a lot. I was constantly like moving and trying to fix things, um like t-shirts, the like sleeves had to be even, and they had to sit right. My shoes had to feel the same. My hair, at the time I had long hair and I had a parting in the across the top, and it had to be exact. I had to have the same amount of hair on both sides, and I just could not concentrate on anything else until that was fixed. I couldn't understand how everyone else was just walking around and like they'd have side parting, or they'd have bags on one shoulders, or they'd have one shoe loose. It's just like, how does that not drive you like up the wall? And so basically, I was dealing with all of this through my teen years, and then in my 20s, the contamination OCD took a nosedive. It got quite bad. I was in quite a dark place with that. Basically, I couldn't clean because that would involve touching dirty things, and I couldn't touch anything dirty with my hands because then I would have to wash them, and they never felt like they were clean enough. And it just got worse and worse to the point that my brain was telling me that the air was dirty and that I couldn't touch the air. And it was so weird because it was like the air touching my face was fine, but if the air touched my hands, that was bad. So then I would have to wash my hands constantly. And I was just like completely freaking out because I was panicking, thinking that things were wrong because I was touching the air. That's how bad it was. And that was when I realised that things couldn't keep going as they were, and that I had to do something to fix it. And I knew that these thoughts and feelings and the compulsions, they weren't normal. They didn't make sense. So I started doing my own version of exposure therapy, where I would just try to go as long as I could without doing the compulsions. And that mostly worked, especially for the contamination OCD. It has taken years, and I still struggle with it now. But it is a lot better than it used to be. One of the things I still struggle with is eating fresh fruit and vegetables, but mostly fruit. If I see like any bits on them, my brain's immediately telling me you can't eat that. It's got germs on it. So then I wouldn't be able to eat it. And for years I couldn't eat any fresh fruit that I had made myself. I was okay if somebody else had made it and it was covered in something like yogurt. But if I bought a packet of strawberries and took them home, I wouldn't be able to eat them, even if I washed them, because, well, also the water was contaminated, according to my brain. The only way I could safely drink water is if I put it in squash, which makes no sense. Yeah, so I was dealing with all of these things, and they're loads better now. I still have the Tourette's OCD, which I'm puzzling through and trying to learn more about. Apparently exposure therapy doesn't work for that, which explains why I've struggled so much with that. So yeah. And there are other types of OCD that I have. Some of them I don't talk about. One of them I'm going to talk about for the first time today, and that is sexual OCD. So basically, especially in my teenage years, I had this where I would have these images pop into my brain and I couldn't like get rid of them, basically, and they were horrifying. Basically it was anything to do with sex. So I would like walk into a room and see someone, and straight away in my brain would be like, you need to look at the private parts, or you need to stare at their breasts. And I was trying not to look at them, and then I would end up glancing because like my brain was basically forcing me to look at them. And then it was just like I get this image pop into my head of what they would look like naked, or like having sex and doing sex things. And it's just, I was just like, no, get out my head. Stop it. Why are you thinking that? I thought there was something really wrong with me. I thought I wanted to see these things, and like at the same time I didn't. I was like, well, why are you thinking them? Obviously you want to think them if you're thinking them. And I was like, but I don't want to think them. And it was quite confusing. And I never told anyone about it because then they might think there's something wrong with me, obviously, and they might think, oh, you're some kind of sick pervert or something. So that was really hard to deal with as well. It's like, it's not as bad now. It seems to have like settled a lot. I don't know. I mean, sometimes I still do get the images popping in, but I've learnt to just like push them away gently, like saying, right, I see you there, but I'm not going to deal with you right now. I'm pushing you to one side. I'll deal with you another time. I think that has helped a lot. But it's like, it's still sometimes my brain will be like, you need to look at this person, and the images will pop in, and I'm just like, ugh, no. They're never nice images. I mean, can you, that's a bit weird thing to say, can you even get nice images? I don't know. It's just, no. So yeah, like if you're in school and you're trying to concentrate and the teacher's standing in front of you and you're imagining them doing sex stuff. Yeah, that's, no. So I'm going to move on to something else. So yeah, I haven't actually been diagnosed with OCD because by the time I realised what all this stuff was, that it was OCD, I'd already been dealing with it for so long, and it's loads better than it used to be. I didn't really think there's not really much point going to the doctors. They'll probably say, well, it's not that bad anymore because you've already dealt with it. There's no point diagnosing you. You don't, it's not bad enough now to fit the criteria. But now that I've discovered the Tourette's OCD, and I am being referred for an assessment for Tourette's, that I'm thinking maybe I'll talk about that with them and see if I can get an OCD diagnosis at the same time as Tourette's. I'm not sure how they'll work it out. I don't know. I mean, I might get there and they'll be like, no, this is something completely different. And I'm like, okay. I mean, because at this point, like, I'm guessing this is what it is, but I'm pretty sure I have OCD. I mean, it fits with like the contamination. That's a big obvious thing. I mean, like with some of it where like sometimes if I get in a car, I will have these images pop in my head of the car crashing, and then my brain's like, well, what are you going to do now? What would you do if this happened? And I don't know if that's OCD or something else. So it's just like, I don't know. I mean, there's so much going on in my head that it could literally be anything. Maybe it's just anxiety, or I don't know. Maybe I'm just daydreaming. Who knows? So yeah, I mean, they could turn around and be like, no, it's not OCD, but I'd be like, the contamination, they're just right. I mean, these are not normal things to deal with, so yeah. Anyway, yeah, so basically, yeah, I'm pretty sure that I have OCD, or at least I had it, and it's nowhere near as bad now. It is manageable. I can live with it. It's not like it was. It's not. I mean, it still affects me, and it's still like sometimes I'll get on the bus and I'll like be like, I can't sit there. Someone just sat there, and that area is dirty, or I still struggle with touching second-hand things. Like if I go into a shop, OCD is weird. I can't wear second-hand clothing, and I really struggle with using second-hand electronics. But I'm okay with second-hand books, although I do have to tend to wash them afterwards, like with baby wipes or something, in toys and things, I'm sort of okay with. So it still affects me now, and sometimes if I get fruit and it has a lot of germs on it, and my brain's just like, no, not today, no. And I do constantly have to do the exposure therapy. That's like ongoing. I don't think that will ever get rid of, because if you start to slip up, the OCD comes back. It's not something that ever goes away. It can change, but it's always the surface. Some days are better than others. For example, as a kid, I'm pretty sure that's the Tourette's OCD. If I stood on a crack on the pavement, I would have to stand on it with my other foot in the exact same place, in the exact same way. And if that was too much or too little or in the wrong place, then I would have to even it out. And that, I mean, I imagine I must look pretty silly walking down the street and then stopping and then moving my feet a bit and then moving my other foot and then just like being like, I look like I was tapping or something on the floor. And sometimes that comes back, like it'll just pop out of nowhere and it's so hard. And sometimes I'm just like, fine, whatever. I'll do the compulsions and like hopefully it won't be as bad tomorrow. So it's not, OCD isn't something that ever goes away. It's like an ongoing fight. And it does get better. But like, I'm always aware that it could come back with a vengeance. I could develop other types of OCD. It could morph into something. Maybe there's some types of OCD that I have that I haven't even discovered, like the Tourette's OCD. I'm still learning about it, and there is a lot to learn, and it's always so unique to individuals. Like a lot of people with contamination OCD, they have to clean all the time, whereas with mine, I couldn't clean. I think that's why it was missed for so long, because when people talk about OCD, they say, oh, it's people who clean all the time, who are constantly washing their hands, who have really nice houses because they're constantly cleaning and stuff, and everything's all neat and tidy. And my house looked like a dump. I couldn't clean, I couldn't touch things. At one point, I couldn't touch the clothes on my body. I had to, like, if I touched like my face or my clothes, I would have to go and wash my hands. But it's like I couldn't hoover because the hoover was dirty. I couldn't clean because the cleaning products were dirty. It's so different to what you see in the media that I didn't recognize it for a long time. And then when I did, I was sort of in denial for quite a while. So it's taken me basically till nearly my 30s to recognize it and then learn about it, and now I'm talking about it. So it's been quite a journey. So yes. So I'm going to try and keep you updated on what happens when I finally see a doctor about the Tourette's OCD. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm not even sure who I'm seeing, because I've been referred to 2 different types of doctors. So I don't know. We'll see. But at least things are moving in the right direction now. And I don't know, maybe they have some kind of support that I've not tried. I don't really want to try meds, but maybe some kind of therapy. So I guess we'll see. Yeah. Anyway, thank you for watching. I hope this has been helpful, or at least not boring. Thanks. Bye.